Welcome back to Seriously, What Could They Be Thinking? This is the show where we unpack the decisions that make you say, did leadership just not think through this? Today, we're talking about Christmas shopping because nothing says holiday spirit like spending money.
Or getting elbowed by a grandmother on Black Friday who absolutely needs that discounted air fryer. All right, Cindy, this is going to be so much fun.
I'm
I
ex-
am pretty excited.
yeah,
But
we have a special guest.
we do, yeah. So I went out shopping and I noticed that the Walmart shelves were empty before Thanksgiving. And that got me wondering, after all the tariff talks we had talked about earlier this year, is Christmas going to be lean and mean this year? So we went to go find that answer. So we're bringing in Dr. Honey Zimmerman. Hi,
Yay.
honey.
Hi,
Hi,
honey. How are you?
good. Thanks for having me. Excited
Let
to be
me
here.
introduce everybody to Dr. Honey Zimmerman. She is our supply chain expert and really good friend. And she's going to help us explore what is going on with Christmas shopping this year and what were the decisions behind that. So, welcome, honey. We're really excited to have you today.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
All right. So you saw empty shelves. I went out for a last minute run because I avoid shopping like the plague. And I saw empty shelves and I thought, oh my gosh, like what are they going to sell? There was nothing on the shelf. So, but when we pinged Honey and said, hey, you want to do this? She said, what do you mean the shelves are empty? So what's happening?
So I'll say from my perspective, I live in a rural area. And yes, when you sent that message, I'm like, I'm happy to jump on, but our shelves aren't empty. And then, we got to talking a little bit about that K-shaped economy. And I think that is true. I think here in rural America, maybe we are being, and maybe this is everywhere, but I've seen more inventory in our stores this year than I feel like, than I have all year long this Christmas season. And I don't know if that is, people were speculative buying ahead of the tariffs and that it just all kind of arrived on time. Or here, I think people are being more deliberate about what they're buying. And so
Mm,
perhaps I think we should dig into, are people buying less or are they buying more? But in general, the store shelves, I think it depends. If you're talking about big box retailer kind of stores, if you're talking about small businesses, I think it kind of depends this Christmas season.
Yeah,
yeah,
so we
we,
went and looked up some information with what is happening. And right now, I'm going to say that inventories are slightly lower depending on where you look, right? So small businesses have been hit pretty hard. Their average 20% lower inventory levels than last year. So we might see some small businesses having some leaner inventory. But at the same time, I think they're doing this in anticipation, right? So we always are talking about what managers are thinking. They were sitting there and they were looking back when actually, let's pause for a second. Honey, when are these decisions made? We're looking at store shelves today for October, November, December for Christmas, but you're the supply chain expert. When were the decisions made about what's going to be on those shelves and how long does that take?
So some of those decisions were made back in February, March, April timeframe. If stores are purchasing inventory from overseas, especially, they have to put in a decent amount of buffer time. It can take up to 2 months to get something by ocean from China. And so they're having to place those orders in advance, obviously giving them enough time to be able to produce the products that they're asking. So we're talking 6, 8 months earlier than they anticipate to have them on their shelves. And of course, as they gear up for their retail stores, this purchasing or the Christmas season, I should say, they're starting to get their shelves packed October, November. And so they're having to make these decisions plenty in advance and not necessarily knowing what's going to happen with the tariffs, for example, what's going to happen to shipping costs, all of those things. It's a bit of a no one has a crystal ball, right? And so it's a bit of a chance that they take on those things. But yeah, they have to make those decisions quite a bit in advance.
So yeah, let's go back in history then and think about what that was. If we're talking about February, March, then we're talking pre-Liberation Day, but we've got new tariffs right now on China, Mexico, and Canada. That was what was going on back then. And so you've got people going, okay, we've got these new tariffs. They're really confusing. We're a little bit worried about moving into recession. Then April hits, beginning of April, we have Liberation Day. The economy or the stock market immediately tanks because of the issue of the tariffs. Trump reverses himself. All of this is about the same time everybody was going to be making the decisions about what we're going to put on the shelves for Christmas. Right? So if we have, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and to know what customers are going to do. So, I mean, it's not just about what a lot of times as I'm thinking about from a mom's perspective, right? What's on my kids' shopping list is what they see. And so sometimes those companies are also helping kind of guide our ideas on what's the hottest toy this year or those kind of things too. And so, but they don't know, the stores don't know what our consumer behavior is going to do either. And so there's the risk on both the supplier side of things, the prices and that kind of stuff, but also on what are our customers going to do. So they're kind of in a little bit of a hard spot.
Yeah, and from what we saw in the data, Jamie, I know you and I were trying to predict, or what will managers do? What decisions will they make? I don't think one of the things that didn't necessarily hit our radar is that they narrowed the choices. So we were talking about, will they spend less? Will they order early? How will they handle this? And one of the things that they did was they reduced the number of different items, and so they're betting on fewer things. So you're saying that the inventory is less, but they're also betting on fewer things and streamlining operations, which I think is just a generally good idea in an uncertainty, is to narrow your focus, not to spread yourself too thin.
Yeah, reducing your SKUs, your stock keeping units.
Exactly.
That is, when from a manufacturer's perspective, when you want to go lean, that's what you do. You quit offering so many different, so I think about a car manufacturer, and instead of offering 16 different trim packages, you go down to 1 or 2, and that is less inventory that you have to manage. But yet you can also get volume discounts from your suppliers. And so, we see that on the manufacturing side of things. And now I think maybe we're just seeing that with the retailers.
Interesting. So here's my question then. What does this mean for us every day? Like, what does this mean when I go to the store?
Well, I think at least what we're seeing, and maybe we're seeing different things in different parts of the country, but I think we are seeing fewer items on the shelves. And it wasn't until we started talking about this that I started to realize that's what I've been seeing actually in the store already. I didn't notice it, but when I only shop at Walmart, and only when I absolutely have to, because I can get everything in one going into the out. But the things that I was looking for aren't there. So if I want a salt-free can of some sort of vegetable, it's not there. And I can't find necessarily even all of the store brands that I'm used to. And so the big name brands, I usually buy the off brand, and I've noticed there are fewer of those. So I think the shelves, like you said, are less full. Honey, have you seen any signs of that, aside from Christmas, but are those patterns?
Well, so my question to you though would be real quick is, does that mean you walk out empty handed, or do you choose something different?
Oh, I choose something different, because usually I'm buying something on my list that we need. I only buy from a list.
Yeah, they're counting on that. They're hoping that, hey, we're going to choose fewer SKUs to offer. And we're hoping that if the customer comes in for product X, that they'll go ahead and substitute product Y, and they won't just walk out. And so they're kind of deciding, I don't want to say deciding for us, right? But they're kind of pointing us in certain directions. And if you leave empty handed, of course, they never ask you why, so they don't really know. But we have to, as consumers, I think that we are more intentional about our purchases this year. I think something else you said, the store shelves are empty. Well, back in April, maybe March, when maybe there was some talks of tariffs, and then maybe that happened in June, maybe there was still some purchasing going on. They anticipated that would increase prices and consumers maybe wouldn't buy as much. But we saw great turnouts on Black Friday. Right? The National Retail Federation said they saw more shoppers out on Black Friday than they had anticipated.
Interesting. Well, okay. So that leads us to the next question, which is, are people spending more or less this season? And so to that point, did we see more transactions? Did we see more spend? What exactly did we see on Black Friday? Is
Jamie,
anybody,
you want to answer that one?
you have the
Yeah, well,
data?
we saw sales were up, right? We saw sales up about 7%, but people are buying fewer items. So volume down, sales up. That was a really interesting mix.
So volume down, sales up. Does that mean that people are buying more expensive items? Like, so I guess are they buying bigger ticket items? Is that inflation? Is it a combination? Honey, you talked a
Yeah.
little bit about your own spending habits. Like,
Yeah.
how does it affect you?
Well, so I think from my perspective, I'm more deliberate in what I'm really thinking about my purchases. And so, for example, I'm just going to give you a real quick example of I'm a big Black Friday shopper. My family likes to, we used to, we didn't this year, I'll say, but, we usually get up early in the morning, we get our matching sweatshirts on and we go shopping in store. And we didn't do that this year. And it wasn't because we aren't buying, because we are, but there are more options now with online purchasing, but we're doing a mixture, more of a mixture. And me personally, I wanted to shop local. And so we chose not to do Black Friday as a family. And I'll tell you that the small businesses are definitely hurting, maybe more so. I'm not saying maybe, they are. Small businesses are hurting more than the big box stores, because they don't have the volume discounts. So when I say hurting, I'm just talking about with the tariffs and with price increases and things like that. And so their inventory was for sure down, maybe even by as much as 20%. And so with me personally, like I'm just being more deliberate in what I'm doing. I'm also doing more price comparisons. And so when I go to the store, I'm looking both, if I'm in Walmart, for example, I'm looking at that Lego toy for my son, but I also have my phone open and I'm looking, what is that exact same toy on Amazon? And I'm comparing, constantly comparing, because I'm having to watch my nickels and dimes. And so I'm just very much aware of what I'm spending, and I'm more deliberate in my purchases.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, I find it's really interesting. And I'm wondering if part of this is the fact that we don't get as good of a view as we used to about what people are suggesting, because we don't go to stores anymore. Well, one of the most fascinating numbers I read was the fact that Cyber Monday sales are 22% higher than Black Friday sales. So, I mean, just think about that massive shift. We all go out, we all spend this money. Yes, Black Friday's been better than ever, although it's mainly because of price increases, right? Not necessarily because of volume. But it's actually 2 days later or 3 days later on Monday when we're all going to shop online. We do more shopping online now than on ground, even for Black Friday.
I don't understand this. So Cyber Monday was supposed to be about people going to the office and shopping where they have internet. Now, everybody help me understand. Is it the sales? Or have we now been trained that you only buy online on Monday? I do not understand the whole why is this happening?
Well, and everything kind of extended, right? So Black Friday is no longer just one day. It like has extended to a week, right? And so for me, my own personal experience is that I shop on Black Friday in person, and then I do small business Saturday locally. And then on Monday, whatever I couldn't get in the stores on Friday and Saturday, now I'm buying the leftover stuff on my list. So usually by those 3 days, I'm probably 80% done with all my shopping list.
Wow.
Well, you're very organized, honey. I am not. So I have to tell you that as of right now, I have maybe 5% of my Christmas gifts purchased. All of those have been purchased online. And today I actually walked to each one of my children and said, okay, I know you need to buy for your brothers and sisters and your dad and stuff like that. We're going to sit down and we're going to go to Amazon and we're going to pick these out so that I can make sure they ship in time in order for us to get them. Because the one thing I did not offer my children to do was take them out and actually do the shopping.
Good for you. But and I will admit to being the person who has actually shopped at the gas station the night before. So just saying.
Well, it's better than my husband, who thinks that is what Christmas Eve is for. Like, he thinks that's when you start shopping. So.
That's awesome. Okay. Yeah. That is
you just mentioned real quick about buying in advance or making sure it gets here in time. I have noticed that my online purchases And I don't know, and this might go back to the inventory issue. They're getting longer. They're stocking out more often. And so
Yeah.
I'm having to wait. My what I usually hear in rural America, it usually takes about three to 5 days to get it from Amazon. Usually 3. And I'm now seeing where it's already going out to December 22nd, December 18th. You know,
Interesting.
so the shipping times are longer. And I don't know if that has to do with inventory
It
or
might
what
have
that.
something to do with inventory.
I'm
I
seeing
don't
the
know.
same here. I thought it was the snowstorm, but
I did
it
too, to
could.
be honest, at first. I ordered something that I expected last week. It's still not here. It just got pushed out again till Tuesday. And I'm kind of mad, I got to tell you, which is it really means how spoiled we are. Because I'm like, what do you mean I have to wait an extra 3 days, right? This is really fascinating to me because I also think that we have a kind of this interesting scenario where we're talking about purchasing something months in advance. Then we go back to April, May. We're really uncertain. Tariffs are new. We don't know what's going to happen. They're making the decisions that are going to help shape our opinions. Then we move into, say, September, and we get Deloitte doing their annual holiday survey about how much we plan on spending and where we plan on spending it. And it turns out that Deloitte had pretty much all bad news this year, right? They were saying that we're going to, on average, shoppers were expecting to spend 10% less from 2024 down to $15.95. They were saying that 57% of shoppers expect the economy to deteriorate over the next 6 months, which would then make people a little bit nervous and worried about what they're going to buy. And that they were more likely, 95% of them were more likely to seek deals in order to actually make an acquisition. So all of this is screaming, oh my goodness, this is really, really bad. But then reality hits and we hit November and early December, and we see that the actual shopping, we're up 7%. It's actually a gangbuster year with what's happening. So I find this really hard for leaders, right? You think about this, your managers, your supply chain, you're right. There's no crystal ball because everything that was leading up to this month or November was we're going to have a lean and terrible Christmas. Inflation was going to really hit us hard. And while that has impacted the numbers, it actually looks like it's a pretty jolly year right now.
Yeah. Honey, how do you navigate that? And I think supply chain managers have access to way more data than I ever even comprehended. I know that for a fact because I know this much about supply chain. But how do folks make these decisions, honey?
Well, I think there's a lot. I mean, there are a lot of tools at our fingertips. There's we're looking at from the consumer perspective, but also we're looking at it from a producer perspective. And so, for example, I use the producer. My background prior to teaching is I was in manufacturing and I was a steel buyer, and so I would follow the producer price index to see what the steel prices are going to do. And so that producer price index, what it does, most people have heard of the CPI, the consumer price index, which shows you what consumer prices are doing. The producer price index shows you what the selling price, the prices to the producers are doing. So, for example, your manufacturing companies, what are their prices from their suppliers, or maybe even that intermediate customer, those retailers? What prices what are they paying? And so that is up right now, 3%. But that's actually up high, actually almost 4%, compared to the consumer price index is only up 3%. And so my point is I look at the data. There's lots and lots of data out there. I look at shipping costs, I look at shipping volumes. Right now, transportation volumes are up. Inventory levels are up in November from looking at October. But when you look at a 5-year picture, our inventory is much, much leaner than it was 5 years ago, even 1 year ago. And so my point is data. We do have a lot of information. I look at that. I look at, like I said, transportation prices. I go to the National Retail Federation and I follow some of their information on what the consumers are doing. And so you have to make decisions and you can't just make them blind. And so as a manager, you have to follow the data. You have to look at that data.
I love that. I feel like we're constantly telling folks, take the emotion out, look at the data. What are the facts? What do you control? One of the things that I find outside of supply chain is that people often don't write down the assumptions they made or the hypotheses they had when they made the decisions. So that when you get 6 months later, you have that, here's what we thought was going to happen. You just have the other thing that happened because it never goes the way you think it's going to go. So, so I encourage people to write down their assumptions or their hypotheses. Is that a normal part of the process in supply chain management, honey? Or is it sort of people don't do that?
I would say, I would say no. Yeah, I think it's more because in supply chain, we're putting out fires all the time.
Mm,
We are constantly day to day. What I love about supply chain is every day is different. And we don't know what's going to happen day to day. And oftentimes we're putting out those fires. And so to make you have to make decisions and you have to be analytical about that. But it's not like you have a lot of time to prepare for that decision.
right.
I think it's a great idea to write down because
Yes.
we're probably asking ourselves, what were we thinking? Right.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Back 6 months from now, what were we thinking? And if we don't know, but again, data. You can go back to the data. You can see what was happening at that time to
Mhm.
make that decision. I think writing it down is a much faster and easier way to do that.
Well, I would say building it into the process. So writing down your hypotheses or assumptions that you made, as many as possible, because then that lets you go back through it and learn from it. What did I think was going to happen? What was that based on? And then, and Jamie and I are always talking about how do we use this information to make ourselves and our teams better. I think the companies that actually sit down and go through those decision processes and learn something from it, maybe find an assumption that they didn't know that they made and then learn from it. Those are the ones that I think are going to fare better the next time around as they're making decisions on purchasing in this crazy uncertain environment.
Well, one last thing, we haven't talked about yet is, again, data, following what our consumers are doing, what our customers are doing, whether we are the intermediate customer, the intermediate supplier, or we're the retailer, but is paying attention to what our customers are doing. And earlier we had talked about offline was about omni-channel. And
Mm,
that's really important. So what that's saying is, I'm looking at, I know some of my customers are online shoppers, and I know some of my customers are in-store shoppers, and I may not want to have inventory in both places. And so I'm going to pick and choose. Earlier we were talking about reducing our SKUs. That doesn't mean that that company is not going to sell it. It just means that they might not carry it in store, but you can still go online to purchase it. And so those again are some deliberate decisions the retailers are making. And then but that also it's kind of I don't want to say a chicken and an egg kind of situation, but that has formed our consumer behavior to constantly be looking what's in store, what's online. But it also allows those people like you, Cindy, who don't want to go to the stores. You have that option, and those things are still at your fingertips. Compared to, I do like to go into the stores, not for groceries, but for fun shopping. And what I have offered to me is maybe different, or
right.
maybe not as much as what you have online. But
Fun
yeah,
shopping.
Fun shopping.
An oxymoron if
It's
I've
not
ever heard.
me, and it's definitely not my children in a lot of ways. Like I can remember, as a teenager, hanging out at the mall and stuff like that. But I'm sorry
But
that
did
is
you
something
spend
in the
any money?
past, and I will order my clothes online and ship them back if they don't fit. These days,
not
it's a
me.
different world.
Well,
Well,
honey, thank you so much for joining us. This has been awesome. And to anybody who might still be listening, the next time you see an empty store shelf, don't panic. It might just be a retailer practicing some minimalism.
And if the prices look weird, that's because they are. Inflation has entered its abstract art phase.
And remember, supply chain folks, we're doing the best we can. Please don't yell at us.
Until next time, keep your spreadsheets handy and your coffee strong.